Well, hello and welcome back to another show here at the Wanna Be a VFriend Instagram page, the YouTube channel, the twitch.tv/VFriends. Hi, everybody. Welcome in. I'm going to be talking about book game strategy. It's a little preemptive as we're still waiting on the details for what to know is best. But there's a little bit of white space here where you can make an educated guess and maybe find yourself in alignment with what is going to be the best strategy, depending on what you're going for. So I'm going to record a podcast, break it down, and Bizzy NFT from the Discord, who's been doing YouTube live videos and sharing his analysis on the collection, is going to be joining me as well. Instagram, when Bizzy joins me, you're not going to be able to hear it because I'll have him on Twitch, but I'll probably just close out when we get to that section. You can listen to the podcast or you can join me at twitch.tv/VFriends. So I'm gonna start the podcast. I'm sure he'll be here soon. I'll give a little music. Drofig, good to see you. Now, let's fucking go. Let me hit record. I know what I want to say. Good morning, my V friends. Welcome back to Jeremy Knows. This is going to be a cut take. Oops, cut. I didn't do my intro. Good morning and welcome back to Jeremy Knows. I'm your host, Jeremy the Heart Trooper number 7. As always, you can pump the speed on the playback up to 1.5. I promise my diction will hold true and it'll save you a bit of time. I hope wherever you are in your day, you're feeling empowered. I hope you are feeling focused. I hope you are feeling excited for what's coming in Series 2 and book games. Today, we're going to be talking about book game strategy. And I want to disclose, as always, that this is strictly educational and informational only. This is not any sort of financial advice. I can't promise any kind of returns or certainty on what I'm about to say. And furthermore, this book game strategy is a bit preemptive in the sense that we don't have full knowledge of how the dynamics for minting Series 2 will go. We're only operating with the knowledge we have. And over time, more and more of these book games combinations will reveal themselves to have specific utilities and uses within the ecosystem that we don't yet have. But that also provides a little bit of a white space for people who are looking to get in at this price where the floor is 0.22. 0.2 to 0.24 sort of fluctuating to make an educated guess and potentially benefit when we find ourselves at that Series 2 mint, which is coming in April. So I'm going to break down 3 strategies based on what based on what your objective is. And then a little bit later, hopefully Bizzy NFT will join me. We'll see if that plays out. I just sort of sprung it on him. He happened to be in the Discord. So anyway, here we go. So the 3 strategies that I want to present for you are if your priority is to get access to the Series 2 mint, if your priority is to get access to the new 15 characters, or if your priority is to hold for the long term and benefit from the deflationary aspect of the book games collection. Now, all of this can sort of coincide, but I think there are separate strategies for these 3 objectives. And let's give us a bit of a baseline of what we know about book games in Series 2 before we dive in. So Book Games is a companion collection to the book that Gary Vaynerchuk wrote called 12 and a half. There are 13 core characters and 3 special characters. Each of these book game tokens can be burned for other assets. But what you may not know is that only the 13 core characters can be burned. You cannot burn the Keynote Koala, the Time Machine Tiny Ogre, or the Paper Hands Pony. So when we're looking to which tokens can be burned for the new 15 characters or burned in the Book Games Exchange, we're only talking about the primary 13 core characters. Now, this collection was originally 125,000. It's now about 122.5,000 as some 2,500 tokens have been burned. The second aspect of this is that Book game tokens are also a friends pass, and this is the only utility with which anyone can access the pre-sale for Series 2. I know this gets a little complicated, so I'm going to try to keep it very simple. Book games are a friends pass. Friends pass is this new introduction of utility that will operate as a sort of raffle, and the first raffle ticket and the first use of it will be for the Series 2 pre-sale. What I mean is, in the future, this Friends Pass could be used for any number of things. This is just the first use of it. It may come back around. We don't know how often, but your book game is a Friends Pass. The rarity of your book game token does not give you any improved chance of your Friends Pass winning in whatever raffles we see going forward. What we know for sure is that only book game tokens will be part of this raffle. No Series 1 V Friends will be part of this raffle that will put your Friends Pass for book games onto the Friends list or the pre-sale list, where you'll have 12 and a half days to mint Series 2. And we'll talk about those details. And lastly, that there is a subset of Series 2 that is new characters. There are 15 of them, of which you cannot pay to mint, but you have to burn book game tokens. So there's a wide misconception that you have to burn your book game tokens to get access to presale. That's not true. Or that you have to burn your book game tokens to mint. That's not true. Let me try to say it even simpler. One book game token is one chance at getting on presale. For every chance that earns that friends list spot, you can mint one Series 2 token. You'll either pay $1,000 in ETH to mint a random character and rarity, or you'll have the opportunity to burn multiple tokens, I think at least 5, to get a new one of the new 15 characters. And I believe you'll have your selection of them and that there will be rarity requirements involved. I hope that everything regarding the V2 Mint was clear. Now I'm sure I'll clarify it as we go forward. So the first strategy is, if you don't have a interest in the new 15 characters, or you don't plan on having the volume of tokens to be able to burn, you want to keep your book game tokens, but you also want access to Series 2. In this case, your strategy is volume. You want to collect as many as you can, because the more tokens you have, the more chances you have. And the furthermore question is like, but which ones do I get? There's 3 elements of rarity. There's the artwork, there's the background, there's the frame. Regarding access to the friends list, it doesn't matter which ones you get. You can buy whatever's on the floor, whatever's cheapest. You can buy what you like. You can go strategic and buy a series of gold or a series of empathy bubblegum, but it's not going to give you any improved chance in the presale. Furthermore, I think that there might be an opportunity in empathy bubblegum. We saw that Lava Patience is going to be the first one to burn in the presale, and we don't know exactly how this is going to work. Lava Patience doesn't give you a increased chance of getting presale, but once you're in the presale, Lava Patience will get the first opportunity to do so. And I think with Empathy Bubblegum being by far the most common token in the collection, usually sitting around the floor, that there might be an arbitrage there, in that it's the most common. It will get burned more frequently than other tokens. Over time will become more rare. If you decide to hold it, it gives you more chances at the Friends Pass, and maybe it even gets early access to minting. I see Bizzy's joined us, so I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna bring him up, and we'll have him join in the conversation. So everybody who's on Instagram, I'm gonna be now strictly on Twitch because there's no way for me to route the audio to you, unfortunately, for that. So twitch.tv/vfriends. I guess I can leave this running if you want to just hear the one-sided conversation, but if you want to hear the combo, go there. You got a conviction this morning. Nice. Congratulations. Okay. So let me get the podcast set up. Let me get Bizzy up here. Hey, bud. How are you?
Hey, man. Appreciate you having me here. I'm
Oh,
sorry
I
to mess up.
hear
Do
you.
you hear me?
Hold on. Is it me? Um, go ahead and say something now.
Test one,
Yeah, I
two.
can hear you.
All right.
Okay,
I
cool.
was just saying thanks for having me here. I sure didn't mean to mess up the folks on Instagram. I'll do some good charades when I talk, so you can.
Oh, they're not even looking at you. It's
Yeah,
like I would have normally just recorded this on my own, but I happen to see you on the Discord, and we've been meaning to like jam it up. So this is great.
I
Um,
appreciate it.
I always find myself like having a very focused idea and then being way too verbose about things. So hopefully we'll see how it goes.
I thought
Um,
your last one was great. I think you gave some great information that people really needed to know. We
Great.
get very similar questions over and over, so it's nice to have a place that you can go and get those answered.
Yeah, cool. So I'm gonna start the podcast. And why don't you like say hello, introduce yourself, and then I'll carry forward into my two other buckets, and you can we'll just jam.
Sure.
Cool.
Sure.
All right, we're back. I'm very excited to have Bizzy NFT joining us. This is going to be a bit of a free form podcast. I hope you enjoy it. I want to give Bizzy a chance to introduce himself, and then we'll carry on. So, hey, how are you? Welcome.
Hey, thanks, Joey. Thanks for having me. Hey, everybody. Bizzy NFT, big book games fan, Gary V fan, and have been tracking it since the inception of the book games project. With Jeremy trying to offer some value to everyone out there, trying to understand what this project is all about, how it impacts VFriends Series 2. So, really excited to be here with you, Jeremy. Thanks so much.
Totally. I'm sure there's a lot of directions we could go, but I do want to keep it sort of focused on like buying strategy, and what I said at the beginning is we don't have all of the information yet. So you might benefit from making an early move, or you might find out more information later that made your move not as maybe opportune as had you waited a week. So just want to reiterate that like more information is coming in the next couple of weeks, but if you move at that time, you'll be racing the rest of the market who's getting that information. And so you're sort of mitigating that risk. Is there anything you wanted to add to the sort of like if your goal is to mint Series 2, high volume, as high a quantity of tokens as you can get is the strategy, right? Like I'm thinking probably 1 in 5 are the chances of getting a spot. Are there any other like floor tokens that you think might over index? Like I was saying, empathy bubblegum might be a play just simply because it's the most common. Like there has to be a reason for that is why I mention it. Is there anything in that regard you want to mention before I move on?
Yeah, I think you did a good job of explaining. I caught the first few minutes of your podcast here. I think that you did a good job of explaining that quantity is absolutely the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to sweep the floor on that. But so far as the information goes, it comes out daily when Gary decides to give us that information, and it can change everything on a dime. And so we're consistently tracking that to try to see if something specific is important, just like patience, when you called out patience in lava, that being important. We still don't know exactly how that mechanic's going to work, but
Yeah.
we're tracking all of that with the idea that if you want to get a book games token, quantity is number one. There's some folks in the Discord tracking very closely the wallets and the wallet size. There aren't many people who have a ton of book games token. In fact, the majority have less than 5. So when you think about it that way, and you think about the possible size of the project for VF2, it seems like your number 1 in 5 is probably a good guess. I can't imagine that if everybody who's got 100 tokens, which there aren't many people that have that, they have no better chance than you do percentage wise, right? Theirs could get drawn, or 0 of theirs could get drawn. So the more you have, the better chance you have. It's just that's the basic foundation of what we know right now.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I want to give a little more clarity on the lava patience thing before we move on to the other two strategies. I don't think I've shared this with you yet, but it came up in the comments. Maybe you were in that live stream, but there is an empty space in all of these artworks, right? So you have the background in the art, and then you have a black empty space, and then you have the frame. And someone asked me, like, what is that empty space for? Like, and it just didn't dawn on me before that it could be for anything. It was just part of the design. But now I'm thinking this indication that lava patience will burn first that empty space is actually going to be used to indicate to us which level of the presale we're in. So although rarity doesn't factor into your chance of getting presale, the type of token that goes to presale is going to, it seems, give you sort of tiered access, right? Like lava patients will go first, then wood frames, then whatever, maybe empathy bubblegum, then maybe diamond, whatever, you know. And it would be interesting if, like, kind of like in a rainbow fashion, it's like red gets to mint first, then orange next, then yellow next. And that way we have a visual indication in the market. If you're buying a token with this red, you know you're in the first round to pre-sale. If you're buying one with green, you're guaranteed pre-sale, but you're in the fourth round. I think it'd be really cool if they could update the artwork in that way.
It'll
By the
be
way,
interesting.
that's
Yeah,
totally speculative.
yeah, it really is, and it's as good a guess as any, right? So it'll be interesting to see how complex Gary wants to make this compared to VF1, right? VF1 being a Dutch auction, he had those parameters in place. It was very well understood. With book games, it is games, right? And he can decide to make it as complex or as simple as he wants to. He certainly called out patience, lava, he called out wood. So the mechanic on that, it would be interesting. I don't know. I wouldn't put my money on him changing that empty space for VF2. I think that would introduce a level of complexity that might be more than is needed. Right?
Sure.
Certainly could be and could be in play long term. I just would think that if that was going to be the case, he probably, I would hope, would have said something about it by now.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. I mean, one of his most recent comments was that there are a lot of logistics for Series 2. And whether it's this empty space or like a notation in the metadata, there needs to be a way for them to communicate to holders that they have pre-sale, right? It could be a spreadsheet with all of the active token IDs, but that's super inefficient and a lot of friction for holders. So I'm hoping that there's a simple way. Yeah, anyway, we could talk about this for hours.
Sure.
Let's shift into strategy for the new 15 characters. So this is my take. I think we're aligned on this for the most part. If your goal is to burn your book game tokens for the new 15 characters, number one, you're going to need a certain quantity to ensure you get a pre-sale spot. I think 5 is the absolute minimum. And you're probably going to need 5 or more tokens to burn in order to get the new characters. But we don't know exactly how many, and we don't know what the rarity requirements are. My suspicion is that they'll be correlated to token frames. There are 15 new characters. There are 15 frames. And like Gary said, you'll need fur frames for the Fearless Fairy. The ninja will require black frames, the clown, rainbow, and on and on and on. And we don't know what that is yet. So I would suggest your buying strategy, if you want the new characters, is to focus on a specific frame. And this is a big one where you might get more value for your ETH if you buy early, but you might end up buying a frame that correlates to the character that you don't actually want. Like right now, I think clear frames, caviar frames, emerald frames, gold frames, these are all pretty undervalued, relatively undervalued. And so if you were to get 5 to 10 of matching frames, I think you stand a good chance at meeting the rarity requirements, but we won't know which characters correlate for another couple of weeks, probably. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. 15 frames, 15 new characters. It just makes sense. My hope is that as we get the more rare, more special characters in VF2, and you climb the rarity of the frames, you get into, neon pearl, champagne, that the requirement to burn for that isn't as high. There's only 645 champagne frames left in the game. If you have to burn 5 of those, I can only imagine there being just a few of those characters, whatever one matches to that frame, being left. So hopefully there's tiers, whether it's core, rare, very rare, something like that. And as you climb the rarity for the new characters, the amount of frames that you need, while being more rare, you'd have to burn less. That's the hope. I don't know if that's the case, but it would seem to reach.
I think that makes sense. I mean, I'm projecting for like the top tier of ninja, for example, like you'll need to burn 25 black frames. Like that's a little more reasonable, but to burn 25 champagne frames for a spectacular whatever alpha alligator or whatever it is, we're talking 30 ETH, in the current prices. So I think you're right. I think maybe it'll be more like 5 champagne frames at most, but time will tell.
That's still a lot, and not a lot so far. I think the value is there. I think those characters will be worth that. I think it's just hard for people to obtain that.
Yeah.
Because if everybody's going after it, those champagne frames will clear out very quickly. You won't see any listed for sale. You won't be able to get.
The floor is very thin on a lot of these more rare combos. And another thing to call out regarding the new characters is we might see a similar. You have to know what kind of collector you are. Are you looking for value to mint V2 and flip? Are you looking to hold for long term and get the most out of whatever future utility there might be? Because one thing we saw in Series 1 is that the multiple of cost and investment for cores was like far outpaced spectaculars. People who minted cores got some 10, 20, 30x relatively quickly, where spectaculars from the floor at 3 ETH have done like a 7 to 10x, maybe like 15 at the absolute peak. So we might see a similar thing with the new characters, that they will be priced higher in the market. They'll be perceived as more valuable, and they may have better utilities or value, but that the liquidity for the new characters, if you're looking to sell for a profit, will probably be a lot lower than a standard Series 2 character.
Let me ask you this, Jeremy, because you know more about VFriends than I do, certainly. Would you think that's the reason for what you just described, where core has seen a much higher gain than the more rare characters? Is that due because people are have a short-term outlook? They're not recognizing the long-term value of this play. Certainly, those more rare are going to be valuable in the long term. Gary's going to make them more valuable, but is it because people aren't looking long-term? They're still thinking about NFTs in the short-term flip, trying to get a bag?
It's a good question. I think it's a combination of things. I think, yes, the market is generally seeing VFriends 1 as a 3-year conference ticket. I follow this every day, and I still can't really comprehend or explain concisely how development of the IP will return to token holders. I have a concept of it, but it's a very intangible idea. Secondly, it's also just a matter of where there is liquidity in the market. When spectaculars were 30 and 40 ETH, they were selling at those prices, but there would be 5 to 10 core sales per one of those spectacular sales. At the same time, we occasionally see pandas and black cats selling for elephants, selling for 50 ETH. So there are buyers who see that long-term value. But I think it has just a lot to do with like the opportunity cost of that much Ethereum, right? VFriends isn't doing numbers the way that a lot of other collections have and can and do. And so I feel like the other thing is people know there's a short-term opportunity right now and that they have time to get into a long-term hold like VFriends. Mm-hmm. And so they're letting their Ethereum work for them in other collections where they can get a quick 2 or 3 or 4x, and then we'll roll into VFriends eventually. I think a lot now we're seeing after a VFriend sale, we're seeing someone tweet about it and be like, I've been wanting to make this purchase for a long time. Like, this is the biggest bet I've made in a while. Like, I can't wait to see this go for the next 45 years. Like that kind of thing, even for cores. And the other thing, and also to bring it back to book games, is you can't really convince me until it happens that all NFTs are severely overpriced. Like, I don't know if what we're seeing right now in terms of the market is inflated in a way that we'll never see it again, or if it's or if it might take 10 years to come back to these levels once we fall. Not saying that fall is so imminent, but I do think that there is going to come a time where a lot of liquidity leaves the market and a lot of these projects go to zero, and VFriends will fall with the macro move and utility will be added, and that will support the price. Similarly to book games, once we can see which tokens do and don't have presale access, I expect a sort of stratification. I expect the floor price to fall to 0.15-ish, maybe lower, but that the presale access tokens to pump to 0.3 and 0.4 because they have a guaranteed utility. I think a similar stratification will happen over time, that maybe where we're at with cores at 14 ETH will be the floor for rares or very rares, but that over time we'll see more stratification, cores, fair value dipping closer to 10, maybe below. And now I'm saying this also, there's so much unknown and irrational behavior in the market. Like, it's hard to predict any of these things, but just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right, and especially about the liquidity in the market where there aren't enough buyers at the high end, so people are jumping
Right.
into that low end. And I've talked with people from all over, Wales and otherwise, who have talked about what they're buying. And it's interesting to see, even the whales, I think, are not going after the high end tokens as much. You know, maybe they have one pony, maybe they have one koala, but they are stocking up on opportunities to mint BF2. So it seems like that is the main driver right now.
Great. So let's go to the last part of this strategy, which is, or the last possible objective you may have, and that is the long-term hold. I'll just pass it straight to you. Like, for someone who may or may not mint Series 2, but is looking to book games as their VFriends exposure, they're looking to hold tokens for 3 to 5 years or more and benefit from the deflationary aspect. Where would you suggest them spend like 2 Ethereum? Not financial
Yeah.
advice.
No, yeah, exactly. I can tell you the way that I approach it, and I've said this on my YouTube. I've said this a couple times to people individually. My focus is the long term for sure. I'm not trying to flip book games tokens necessarily. I'm holding for VFriends too as well. But I do look at the rarity of the tokens, and I try to find value based on what I can afford to be able to buy multiples of, as well as something that I think is going to go up in value. So I had previously ranked them from in tier one, tier two. Tier one being the convictions and the gratitudes, where they started off with combinations of 279 versus like a tenacity hologram, which has maybe 1,000 of that combination, not even counting frames. But I look at that tenacity hologram as a tier two, but I also see it as something that has much higher rarity than an empathy bubblegum where there's thousands, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I see that and I say, okay, for a little bit more, I can get something that I can hold. I believe if the deflationary pressure comes about, there's people burning, that's going to even increase in value and become more rare. And the key for me is it can't be so rare that I would have a hard time selling it. Right now, if I can get my hands on a koala or a pony, I'm never selling that. But if Gary comes out and says, hey, you have to burn this tenacity hologram that you have for whatever he's offering, I would probably do that at that level. But if I'm holding a koala hologram champagne frame, it's never leaving my side, right? So
Right.
for me, I'm looking at something that's got a long-term value. It's going to increase, but it's in a reasonable price range, and then trying to find something that's near the floor of that. Occasionally, you'll see something drop. I always see, regardless of combination, something that's 10 to 20% less than the rest of the tokens, someone trying to liquidate. If you can find those, if you're patient and you're paying
Yes.
attention, you can find some deals like that among the combos.
This is a really great point in terms of strategy. Your time spent buying book game tokens, you'll probably get more of a return if you spend 15 to 20 minutes a day versus 20 minutes all at once, or 5 minutes all at once, just sweeping the floor. Because, and especially for the long term, like, buy things that you like. Like, I've started to collect gold tokens because it's an aesthetic matching combo. I know eventually it will come around to matter, but it's not so expensive that I have to pay a crazy premium. There's a lot of opportunities where, assuming that the floor price isn't wildly inflated based on the scarcity of the tokens that we see on the floor versus others, like especially the frames, like emerald, neon frames, even rainbow and caviar. The scarcity of those tokens, it like far outpaces what's at the floor, but you end up paying 0.1 or less to get that token. And so, especially if you can have the patience to wait for somebody who needs the liquidity, right? And you're checking occasionally. I don't know. I don't think there's a way right now to have any notifications for when these things go on sale. I'm sure somebody's developing that bot, but patience definitely will save you some money if you can afford to do that.
And even patience on the other side. So in typical financial transactions, they say you make your money on the buy, and that may be true, but you also have to be patient when you sell it. Sometimes people say, well, I want to go get a better token, something that's more rare. This conviction dropped and I want to go grab that. And so they
Yeah.
sell their other tokens for floor or under floor to try to get the liquidity they need. If you do that, you stand to lose some money, and maybe you get the token you want, and maybe you think that there's value in that. But patience is absolutely key in this game. We're barely over a month in,
Yeah.
and there's so much more to be played. I can only imagine what Gary's going to announce at VCon after VF2 drops. That's going to continue to pump this project, and then
Hmm.
well beyond that, right?
Yeah, I love the comments you made. Somebody asked in the Discord, like, do we think that the price will fall off after the VF2 mint? And I answered, it depends on what the next reason to hold is. And your answer was VCon will be the next reason to hold. You want to give a little more insight on that?
Yeah, there's just too much that Gary has put into this conference. I saw a podcast with him yesterday where he was talking about the conference costing him like $10 million, something like that, right? So he's putting in a lot of time and effort. He's obviously drawing big names to this conference. There's too much going on for him not to plug this project, also pump in what's coming next, and it's going to continue to drive the value of it, which I think is going to cause the floor to stay high or even go up further.
Yeah, makes sense. Two more things I want to chat about before we wrap up. Um, let's talk about conviction and gratitude. So these are the rarest tokens. I'm actually gonna check the floor right now. They've ranged between 1 to 2 ETH. Like right now, the floor on conviction is 1.2. The floor on gratitude is 1.4. And there's plenty of irrational listing, like gratitudes with rare frames that are not over indexing so crazy from the floor. But these are also some like, I don't know, 5 or 6x. And their supply sort of matches that. Like there's only 279 of each spectacular variety of either gratitude or conviction. But the reason I want to go deeper on it is because Gary has said these are key tokens, that these are going to be required for certain burn events. And we can see this in the book games exchange already, where certain combos will have rarity requirements, and you need to burn a set of tokens and one conviction or and one gratitude. That it's the key to being able to access that opportunity. So I guess my question for you would be: do you think that's going to be a big factor in the V2 burn? Like, will we need a gratitude or conviction to participate in the new character burn, or do you think that's more of a medium and long term thing for the future access and experiences that he's teased?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So we have seen it in the exchange. The Just Art bundles obviously require that. The VCon tickets are requiring that, where you have to have one of each attribute. So that is an interesting question. I think that anytime he's asking for something with that level of rarity, it's going to have to be something that's got a pretty incredible value and
Yeah.
also something that's very limited, a limited quantity. So, for example, there are only so many VCon tickets that are available in each spectacular because at some point you're going to run out of specific attributes to burn. There, as you said, there's only 279 in each background. So, at
Yeah.
the most, he could only offer 279 tickets in that spectacular background because then he'd run out. So, when it's tough because we do talk about book games being forever, and yet a month in, we're already burning things where there's only 279 of them. The
Yeah.
deflationary pressure is going to be amazing, and I'm very excited for BF2 to see how much gets burned and how much more that causes the floor to rise. Can you imagine 5 years from now, 10 years from now, where you have the only empathy bubblegum that exists because all the
Oh my
rest have been
gosh.
burned? I, I mean, that seems far fetched today, but I can imagine that being the case for some tokens that we have no idea about, and then we turn around, it's a one of one or a one of two.
It does feel a little far fetched. I mean, at the rate we're going, we would we've burned less than 3,000 tokens. So I'm getting the figure right now.
It's
Bfriends.com.
36,000 in a year, though. right? That'd be 4 years and we'd be done. Less
Wow.
than 4 years.
But how many people are on the forever train and they're like, I don't care what Gary puts in front of me. I am going to be one of those people in 2026 and 2032 and 2047 that are just marveled, when they have one of the last 800 book game tokens or something. We won't know until we get there.
Yeah, so I put this out in my last video. There's 22,000 holders, but there's only about 11,000 tokens listed. So does that mean 50% are holding and not listing anything? Again, a lot of people only have one.
Even more. I'm holding 50 tokens and I have like 5 or 6 listed. So there's a lot. I think there's a lot more people that are holding 10 or more tokens and have a couple listed than there are probably plenty of people who have just one that aren't even, they're just sitting pretty.
Yeah, I agree. Lots of people with 5 or less that aren't listing at all and they're holding. Now, what's going to change that behavior? I don't know. If Gary offers something great like this burn sale for VCon tickets that he's talking about, I don't have a lot listed, but I'm willing to make a burn for something like that. So
yeah, if it's 5 tokens or less, I'm definitely going to go for another VCon ticket.
Yeah.
And I don't share my collection to brag, but I actually meant to do a disclosure before this video. Like I've been talking about book games a lot because it's in the pocket of attention, but I also feel like it's important to let you know that I hold many tokens in this collection. It's my biggest position right now, and I do have a couple listed, so I could benefit from talking about this, but I've also listed mine all above 1.5 ETH, so please feel free to buy my bags. I'm just going to be putting it right back in the book games. To wrap up, let's just address when is this Series 2 snapshot? We know that Series 2 is coming in April. Do you think they're going to give us a week, 2 weeks of trading after knowing whether or not we made pre-sale before we actually have the 12.5-day pre-sale? Or just generally, when should we expect to know that we got pre-sale?
That, again, a great question. I think that's something Gary's working on right now. Hence his comment in the Discord recently, a lot of logistics, right?
Yes.
They're trying to figure out exactly how much lead time is needed, how much lead time to announce that you have been selected, to give you the opportunity to make that. Then you have the 12.5 days. So there are a lot of steps in the path to get us to that mint. I would imagine that people have asked this question, I've answered the same way consistently. We will have a chance to buy tokens after what's needed, like the frames that are needed for the characters are announced, if that's what's needed, the way they match up. So I think we will have that opportunity. I think Gary's going to sit back and enjoy making that comment and then watching the floor go crazy and then watching the burns come in when the frames are announced for the characters. I think that timing is going to be very interesting, but that there will be a window for us to make some selections and to try to grab the floor as it triples or whatever it's going to do.
Yeah, totally. And quick recap. So for Series 1 holders, you don't have access to pre-sale. There's a surprise for you that hasn't been announced yet. We're anticipating that the VCon NFTs drop before Series 2 toward the end of March. Then we'll have the pre-sale, then the public sale for Series 2. And then we'll have less than a month probably before VCon itself and whatever is coming next. And to recap the book game strategy, I know there was a lot in here and it got conversational. I hope that was illuminating for you. There's basically 3 strategies that I see. You're either in it to get as many Series 2s as you can, in which your strategy should be quantity. You can buy anything off the floor. The more you have, the more raffle tickets you have, the more chances you have. You'll be able to mint 1 per raffle ticket that wins, and you'll pay $1,000 in ETH per each of those mints. Alternatively, your strategy could be to get these exclusive top tier new 15 characters, of which you may want to wait until the details are revealed, but you could preemptively go for matching frames. It seems like a volume of matching frames is going to be an important unlock, but it's a higher risk in that regard. You're betting on where the market will be, not really knowing for sure. And then thirdly, you have the long term where, and this gets a little blended, but for your long term buys, like buy stuff you like, buy stuff that over indexes in rarity but not in price, and where possible, I would say roll into like the special tokens if you can. Like over time, if you're holding book games for the long term and you've accumulated like 10, and then there's this pump into series 2 and you're not really interested in that portion, you might consider taking some profit and rolling it into a koala or a pony. You probably won't reach a tiny time machine ogre unless somebody does a fat finger mistake and you're there to catch it, but you never know. Patience is definitely rewarded. And like literally Gary has said this multiple times, that his number one objective with NFTs is to teach people patience. So probably empathy bubblegum, probably patience, probably lava tokens in general, wood frames, these common things that don't usually over index. They're probably going to get a lot of love from Gary in the early days, but we'll have to wait and see. Hold on, I'm going to pause the recording. I'll be right back. Anchor only lets me do 30 minutes. Okay, with that, Bizzy, you and I can keep chatting on Twitch, but let's wrap up the podcast. Please give us a little, like, where can people follow you? You're on YouTube. Where can my audience catch your content?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I try to make YouTube videos as alpha comes available. I go live on my channel, Bizzy NFT, no spaces, just like you see my name, Bizzy NFT, and just trying to bring value to folks regarding what's new with book games specifically. So try to touch a little bit on VF2 as that's related to book games, and then hopefully one day talk more about VF1 if I can ever get one of those. That's my goal. You can find me on Twitter at BizzyNFT23. I'm trying to do a little bit more with Instagram and TikTok, but those are the main two, Twitter and YouTube right now. Really appreciate that. And also in the Discord every day, all day. Happy to chat with anybody who has questions. So feel free to reach out.
Yeah, and for everybody listening, that's BIZZY and FT. And yeah, Twitter, Discord, YouTube, hit them up. Also, shout out to Tim F, who's been doing a lot of analytics on book games and has put out the book game stats blog post or blog. I'm also going to link in the description this book games manager that allows you to check the floor price on all of your tokens with a quick script. Super big time saver. And that's the show. I hope this was able to help in some way, provide you value, provide clarity. Hopefully we didn't confuse you. This has been a breakdown of book game strategy before the details of Series 2 on the Jeremy Knows podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy, the Heart Trooper number 7. And your attention is super valuable. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. I'll see you tomorrow. It was great, man. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, Jeremy. Thanks for inviting me and letting me chat with your audience. I really appreciate that.
It was fun. Yeah, we should do it more.
Yeah, I do. I mean, there are things that I would love to talk to you about, and whether we do it publicly or not, doesn't matter. But, talking about.
Fine. I've got some time.
Utility. Well, I'm about to go into a work meeting actually, but
there you go. No problem.
We'll catch up on it. Talking about NFTs in general, how everybody, I see it on Twitter all the time. Everybody's talking about their art, and I'm convinced, I think along with Gary Vee, that utility is what matters, and that people. So I talk about this with my wife. I'm guessing we're off right now. Are we in front of people?
We're on Twitch.
Okay,
we're not recording on the podcast.
No, that's fine. That's great. I talk about this with my wife, that I think that there is a group of people who were able to get into NFTs early, and they value being degens. They value jumping into things that are off the grid, people don't really find cool, and they make their community and they drive that community. But I think that there's a transition happening where people who are looking to be real investors and are probably more careful with their investment choices are saying, I hear about NFTs, I want to be a part of NFTs, but you're going to have to show me value and utility beyond this is just cool and everybody thinks it's cool.
Right.
And I think that transition is happening. And that's part of the reason why I got in with Gary Vee, as opposed to getting in on some of these other projects, which have done extremely well. And I hope they continue to do well. But I feel like at any time or any day, the group could say, this isn't cool anymore, and it falls off. Whereas with this, I'm banking on Gary's reputation, his statements that he won't let it fall off, and that there's actual value attached to each of these tokens, in IRL value, as I call it. What do you think?
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, Gary said the same or similar in that, like, right now it's all about art with a bit of utility, but over time, or even more about collectability with utility, and over time it will be more utility with a hint of collectability. I think we're also seeing this play out a lot right now with like membership NFTs. Like, there's been a bunch of projects that have been membership access to a particular individual, whether that's like Tom Bilyeu or Proof Collective or Journey, and they're doing really well because it's like it feels like a lifetime pass. It doesn't necessarily mean there's no cost in the future of that ecosystem, but usually there's like an outsized amount of value that is promised, and we'll see how it goes, right? I mean, even the Bored Ape Yacht Club to some degree is ultimately a membership pass more than anything else.
Right.
Maybe not more than anything else, but Bored Ape Yacht Club is a kind of unicorn of an example now because of their timing, the nature of their artwork, the nature of their collector base. Like, they've got a lot of different things going on. But I think what we're going to see in the medium term, and it really depends on when a bear market hits, is a lot of people who are over leveraged getting exposed either mostly to themselves, and finding themselves either prepared for that moment or not, and probably a lot of people getting wrecked, and leaving an opportunity for more quiet builders, people who don't have the hype at launch but have the skill to operate, build through the bear market, and like a lot of sleeper projects that didn't 10x overnight actually like finding their niche and innovating and providing value, and over time accruing in value. Like, I think a lot of one-of-one artists are having trouble because there's so much noise. It's like, well, so what? You minted an NFT. There's no utility. It's just art, like whatever. But once that artist has executed for 10 years, that Genesis one of one or those early pieces are going to matter more and more as NFTs matter more and more in culture and in like integration into daily life. But it could take a lot longer than that. Like, it could literally take 25 years for any of this to really be understood mainstream. It might take until like VR is actually in the home for NFTs to really matter. Because one of the things that's very misunderstood about the market is that the art is free. Like, you can literally enjoy the art of Bored Ape Yacht Club or Be Friends or World of Women absolutely free. You can right click save it. You can keep it on your phone. You can put it on your background. The only thing you can't do is make money off that image. The same way that you couldn't do that before NFTs. The same way you can't play music on your YouTube that is copywritten.
Right.
So the art is free, but domain over the art and domain over the NFT is what people are still having trouble understanding. Like, I was watching a Stephen Colbert segment last night, and he's being funny, and like, I'm not sure what he really thinks, but he's talking about NFTs as fake things, like versus real things. And the reality is it will take, or I think it will take a long time for people to see digital goods as real things until the digital reality feels more real.
Yeah, that's fair. And we saw that with previous technology, right? So
Yeah.
I'm going to have to let you go. I'm sorry. I
No
really
problem.
appreciate the opportunity, and I'm
It
sure I
was
will
great
catch
chatting
you
with you.
in Discord later. Thank you.
And nice to meet you, really.
You too. Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. I'll see you at the next one.
Thanks.
Peace, brother.
Bye.
I hope everybody enjoyed that. I'm going to sign off now and post this podcast, and I will see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and have a great day. You know where to find me if you need